It is conference semifinals time in the NBA, and we rewind. Call Sports presents on the daily. Well, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Cole Johnson's on the mic on the daily, presented by Cole Sports is on tap. And if you want this shirt that I'm wearing, all you got to do is go to the description box below. That's where you'll find it. And, I think it's time for us to warm up. So let's warm up with the conference semifinal, shall we? Yes, the NBA now has their 4 matchups set. And the Eastern Conference semifinals is already gone underway. You have the Heat already up 2-0 against the Bucks. I'll talk about that a little bit. You also have the Celtics up 2-0 against the Raptors. It's not looking too good for the higher seeds. But let me start actually with the Rockets. They, in an epic, well, not as epic as the Jazz Nuggets, but in a somewhat epic Game 7. With a James Harden block with 4 seconds left to go in the game, the Rockets advanced to play the Lakers by beating the Thunder 104-102. I will talk about the Thunder later on in this episode. Now, as I mentioned a little before, the Heat, they won Game 2 in the Eastern Conference semifinals round. Their matchup against the Bucks is now tilted in their direction, 116-114 after Giannis Antetokounmpo, the reigning MVP and more than likely the future MVP of this year, was called for a foul on Jimmy Butler as he did a step-back jumper from 20 feet away with no time remaining. Now, you can argue old school. Old school would be like, well, it was ticky-tack, and normally if it's no blood, no foul, right? Well, no blood was drawn, but by the letter of the law, it was a foul. And I somewhat agree with Shannon Sharpe of Undisputed. He said, well, whether it was a foul or not, or ticky-tack or not, why put yourself in that position? Understood. When another defender was there. I totally get that. Well, will the Heat and the Celtics maintain their leads and meet in the conference finals in the Eastern Conference? Only time will tell, but the Raptors and the Bucks, if they want to have their rematch from last year, they better start playing defense right away. If not, they will be going home and away from the bubble. I think we have considerably warmed up, and now it's time for the main event. And we talked a little bit about the main event. I mentioned the Thunder. The Oklahoma City Thunder bowed out in the first round of the NBA playoffs. But this day is special for the Thunder's history and ignominious for another city's history. And why is that? I think it's time we should the date, September 3rd, the year 2008. And this is the time the city of Seattle was rocked and reeled when their wonderful franchise of then 41 years relocated to Oklahoma City. And it was complete on this date because this is when the Oklahoma City franchise that was in Seattle officially named themselves the Thunder. Now, to understand how all of this happened, let's take a walk along this journey as to when this was no longer the Seattle SuperSonics. Now, back in 2006, the Sonics, or the SuperSonics in full, they were owned by Howard Schultz. Now, you may know of the guy. I mean, he looks familiar, and you may have heard of his name. In fact, he's talked about running for president a couple of times. Well, man, if you don't know who this guy is, it's simple. he used to own, or you should say, he used to be the CEO of Starbucks. And he also owned the Sonics. And he owned it from 2001 to 2006. The problem, though, was that he owned it at a time when the team was in a financial windfall. They just simply could not get any money. They couldn't make any money. They kept draining money and losing it. And so he said that the team lost money due to an old arena, which it was the Seattle Coliseum. It got remodeled and it got called the Key Arena. And yeah, I can understand that, considering that you looked out throughout all of the NBA and you saw so many of these new arenas and palaces. One of them literally named a palace, just opened up. So it was understandable. Old arena and the small one, actually the smallest one with a capacity of over 17,000. So he wanted Key Arena to be upgraded, updated, and expanded. So it would be state of the art, bigger, and more fan friendly. Well, the cost of those upgrades would have come close to around 220 million. And Schultz wanted the arena to be financed by taxpayer dollars. You already know where this is going. I mean, hey, we've seen so many teams who cried new stadium, taxpayer funded money, and the city balking. Here we go again. So he couldn't reach an agreement with the city. Schultz didn't. And he was forced to sell the team. But he had one small caveat. The caveat being that the person buying the franchise would keep it in Seattle, that they wouldn't move it. Well, this gentleman bought the team, and his name was Clay Bennett. And he owned, or I should say, he was part of the ownership group called the Professional Basketball Club, LLC. Now, where was the Professional Basketball Club, LLC located? Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Yeah. So he bought the team in October 2006, and he sought for a new arena to be built in a nearby Seattle suburb. It was called Renton. Now, he called it a city, quote, on the verge of a transformation, close quote. You were seeing them Bucks, weren't you, Clay? I'm sorry. So the arena would supposedly be worth $530 million. This city on the verge of a transformation had to be asked, the community, I should say, had to be asked to pay for that arena as well. An arena more than $500 million in 2006, let alone now, would have been absolutely preposterous. And you have to understand the landscape of sports around then. You had a boon in the 90s. You had a boon of interest in the 80s. You had a boon of money in the 90s. And you were starting to see a lot of these owners go to cities and say, you would make a whole lot more money if a new stadium or a new arena or a new ballpark would be built, preferably around downtown. And most of these urban centers, I lived in one in Houston, needed to have some sort of boon. And of course, the boon would be you get this new building where you have a whole lot of traffic coming into this area. A whole ton of businesses would profit along with city pride. Well, that is basically what Clay wanted to sell Seattle. Seattle wasn't going for it. In fact, they didn't go for it to the point where the city also didn't reach an agreement with Bennett. And they went so far as to say that there wouldn't be any taxes that would fund any baseball stadium or baseball ballpark, football stadium, or hockey rink, or basketball arena. No taxpayer dollars would go to fund any public sports facility. Well, Bennett started to look elsewhere. And it almost was You almost got the sense that he wanted to look elsewhere almost as soon as he bought the team. And one of the ownership group owners, Mr. Aubrey McClendon, the late Aubrey McClendon, said that Bennett, he really wasn't wanting to keep the team in Seattle. All along, his plan was to move the team from Seattle to Oklahoma City. And why not? I mean, they saw in 2005 when New Orleans had to relocate their football and basketball teams. Well, their basketball team, the Hornets, relocated to Oklahoma City, where they enjoyed 2 years of a wonderful time there. And when the Hornets moved back to New Orleans and eventually moved back to Charlotte, the NBA said, we may need to put a franchise in Oklahoma City. The seed was planted. And then another seed was planted when Bennett bought the Sonics. So at November of 2007, Bennett talked to the late Commissioner David Stern and said, we are moving out of Seattle as of right now. And the city of Seattle, when they caught wind of it, said, And not just the fans, the government too. And they felt so betrayed by Bennett, they filed a lawsuit against him, all in hopes of keeping the team in Seattle. Well, Bennett and the city, they reached an agreement, and the agreement is as follows. So Bennett had to pay $45 million to the city. And if they didn't find a team to relocate there, or if a franchise team didn't sprout up there, then he would have to pay an extra $30 million. Oh, and along with it, the team was supposed to stay in Seattle until 2010. And Bennett tried to find all sorts of loopholes to get out of that agreement 2 years early. And he did. So once all of that was in place, the board of governors and other team owners voted on the move. And the move was approved by a margin of 28-2. The two owners that voted against it, the Blazers' Paul Allen, and the Mavericks owner, Mark Cuban. And actually, because of this, I have a newfound respect for the both of them. I digress. So once the 2008 season was complete, the Sonics moved to Oklahoma City. And it was on this date, 12 years ago, as of this recording, the Sonics were no more. The Sonics were then the Thunder. Now, the Thunder have gone on. They actually went to the finals in 2012, and they've flirted with more success since, getting to the conference semifinals, playing in conference finals, I should say, in Game 7 in 2016. But that's about as far as they've gone since they have left Seattle. Now, as for the city of Seattle, there is a movement to get the team there, and it's getting louder and louder. In fact, future NBA Hall of Famer Kevin Garnett is trying to grab an ownership group to move, actually, the Timberwolves from Minneapolis to Seattle and rechristen them the Seattle SuperSonics. And I personally have to say, I look at this city, and it's hard for me to think of this city without the SuperSonics in it. Yet we have seen it now for going on 13 years. And the Sonics, they need to come back to Seattle, because the Seattle SuperSonics need to be in existence again. And the Sonics, and the NBA, I should say, needs Seattle. Now, if you want to partake in this program even more, I'm so glad that you were asking to do this. Just simply look onto YouTube, like this page, and like this post, and comment. I want to hear what you have to say. And please don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell for all future notifications as to when a new video pops up. Well, that is all the time I have. Thank you so much for joining me again. And I am Cole Johnson. And this has been yet another installment of Cole Sports on the visual and on the daily.